All right. So our plan today, as always with the filibuster, is a fluid plan, but we would like to start out with a conversation. And really, that conversation has begun with Senator McCallum's reflections and with the framing that she offered us, which I wasn't able to write it down precisely, but what has what has just happened? What did it mean? And what happens next? It's maybe a good framing for our conversation. So we have several people on board, and really, I think any of you is welcome to speak out. Several of you were uh, encouraged to give this some preparatory thought, both from the perspective of having worked very hard on the design and behind the scenes and in the thick of the action for the filibuster, and several of you who were observing and taking it in from out there in the virtual world. I see Ameil Joseph, you have joined us, and I know Spring and Q are here, and if I can make my screen bigger, perhaps I'll see more folks who are present. But I would suggest that we open things up. I know Gabrielle also has a statement to bring to the conversation. And Spring, you'll do that when it seems the appropriate moment on Gabrielle's behalf. Garth, I see you're here also. Never a man who's shy for words.
Hi.
Were you present for the senator's reflection, Garth?
I was. I was really moved by the thoughtfulness of that. And the thing that was ringing around in my head this morning was so much less wise and smart. I think it was on Twitter, I saw somebody saying, well, don't worry, you all are resilient. And I was just thinking about how that word is such it has a backhand to it, and to me, I've always heard that word like, oh, you know how to take a punch, and yeah, it's true. I do. We've all kind of learned a little bit how to take a punch, but I'd rather people stop punching down at us, and so I think, yeah, we always got to honestly assess where our movements are, like whatever movement for rights and dignity we're working in. So we got to know when we lose on one thing, and we got to not be demobilized by it. And so it's finding our own reserves and looking to the longer traditions of struggle that we're a part of, I think, and struggles that are walking in parallel and that we're walking in solidarity with, or that we travel through the world with. And I guess that's what I was thinking of this morning. Is right after losing something, I try to back up and think of history is full of losses and full of the next fight the next time, and that I don't need somebody from outside of us telling us to be resilient, because it feels like a backhand to me.
Right. Yeah, good observation.
Catherine,
Spring, yes, go ahead.
would this be maybe a good time to read Gabrielle's sort of opening statement?
Yes, absolutely.
And I have it here, so when I can do that, I can read it. I think it's a very good sort of launching pad to the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
So
Go right ahead.
Go ahead and do that? Okay.
Yes.
So I'm reading this on behalf of Gabrielle Peters. She's here today, but she is unable to speak right now. So, but Gabrielle was a very big part of organizing the disability filibuster, and she has really been a driving force behind a lot of the work that's happened with Bill C7 and working So she has prepared some comments for just to sort of to start our panel or conversation off. And she says, "For me, by the time royal assent happened, my brain had already shifted. Grief, of course, is a recurring visitor, but I've mostly shelved my rage away for now, and I'm feeling the need to focus on some practical things. Perhaps it's my own projection, but I want to give people tangible tools for surviving and coping while under this threat. For me, those things are a toolkit for people who want to organize in their area. Specifically, right now, I've been working on documents for public education, for contacting and engaging with politicians, local community organizations, and a media relations 101 component. The other thing that I've been working on has to do with feelings I've heard expressed by many on social media, and that I have myself about not feeling safe to go to the hospital or medical appointments. I don't quite know why Canadians have failed to grasp that the very act of being offered death by the people who are supposed to help your health is incredibly traumatizing. But as someone who's been in that position, I can tell you there is no going back from that. It permanently alters the way you feel in these environments. To be clear, I never felt safe in healthcare spaces as a CRIP, but this took it to an entirely different level. Whereas I previously felt risk from neglect and mistreatment, I'd never really thought that the people around me were consciously wishing me dead and would be pleased to bring that about. For this reason, I've contacted a lawyer to ask about drawing up templates we could share with other disabled people. One would be a power of attorney stating that at no point would we wish MAID or to have MAID raised with us. A second document, which I've a concept for, but I'm still discussing with experts the best format for, would be something you could carry with you and have copies made to add to your chart that indicates you do not wish anyone to even discuss MAID with you as a possible treatment. The third thing is I've already approached a health authority about adding a process much like allergy alerts to identify patients admitted who do not wish MAID raised with them by any hospital staff. This could involve stickers on a chart or a wristband like the red one they use for allergies, but a different color. The fourth option that's been discussed is something like a medic alert bracelet, a piece of CRIP jewelry, which again is used to signify no MAID. Someone in this group has also suggested the possibility of a tattoo, and I can't remember who. As well, I've been writing and I have a big project which I don't want to discuss yet, but I am hoping to get working on soon. When I'm reflecting on this, especially immediately after the vote in the House, I found myself thinking more about things within the disability community than I did about the other side. I know some will tell me military metaphors are problematic, but I think of these people as enemies because they are, and I don't expect my enemies not to attack me with all they have at their disposal. It is the nature of struggle or war. So for me, I focus on the things I can change and the people who are, in theory, on my side. And on this front, I found the lack of class analysis, not just during the fight against C7, but throughout all of official disability organizations' work, to be a primary problem. I don't want to take up too much time here, so I will start to wrap up now. But the way disability organizations with their paid staff and their need to be not controversial and to build bridges and to appeal to middle-class white sentimentalities have dominated disability, the way they've dominated disability is a huge problem. Their message for decades has been abilities focused, which erases disability as identity and ignores mention of the oppression of ableism and seeks to communicate, we're just like you. Well, here we are with C7 trying to tell non-disabled Canadians that we're not just like you, that have lived experience, that our lived experiences are profoundly different, particularly with healthcare, and they don't have any foundation for understanding CRIP life. I think a great deal about the whiteness in disability and the fact that somehow being racist is seen as an add-on to our work as opposed to integral to it. I think far too many white disabled people's advocacy verges on wishes to be seen and treated as a normal white person. Disability justice provides a lot of leadership and analysis on these things and other issues although I would say it still too often, at least in practice in my experience, lacks critical class analysis. I'm poor, and that is as significant to me, to my identity as disabled. There's no separating these, and the policy designed for middle-class disabled people does not benefit me. I think Gladue is simply the logical extension of the market model of disability tour a man began decades ago. In this moment of history, there's only one group of people who can save all of us, even the middle class, and that is the bad Crips. It's time to stop pleading for a seat at their table and to set our own.
Thank you, Spring. And G. Like, I don't know about other folks, but for me, that just gives a lot of, as Spring said at the beginning, like it provides really an excellent jumping off point for a lot of my own thoughts as well. Yeah, I think it's really valuable to be able to have G's words in this space, even if she can't be broadcasting right now. If it's all right, I'd like to share a few of my thoughts, both as you were reading that, Spring, and also kind of as I was turning it over in my own head last night, thinking about this roundtable. If that's all right with everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Yeah, I really deeply resonate with what G said about the class analysis, and I would say that needs to be taken across all kind of justice-oriented movements that that people across Canada as well as internationally are currently engaged in. I know a lot of the folks involved in the filibuster last week are often involved in other areas as well that deeply relate to the disability struggle. What Senator McCallum was talking about, how Indigenous people and disabled people have very similar stance on C7, as we heard in one of the panels, and in a lot of online activism. There have been a lot of Indigenous leaders speaking out against the harm that C7 will do to Indigenous communities, and the cultural values that are at odds with one another with a bill like C7. And yeah, like we have currently internationally and on the Canadian level, on local municipal levels, there is a sort of reckoning with the controversial idea of defunding and kind of deplatforming policing. And again, that's controversial on many fronts, but a lot of people are very involved in those circles and in those conversations. They are huge ongoing conversations. And I think the disability struggle frankly, to survive and to live freely and wholly as people in society, I think is very much related to those conversations, and we need to be having them together. We can't be isolating ourselves, and also other people in other movements need to be including disabled people in their circles, in their organizing, with access and from the ground up. So yeah, I think all of these analyses come together under the idea of disability justice. All of these analyses are a part of the broader concept of disability justice, as Patty Byrne and Mia Mingus and Alice Wong and other primarily women of color in the United States came up with. And that's what's really been forefront in my mind this past week and a half, is how do we broaden our scope and bring all of these thoughts under this huge umbrella. But yeah, that's where my brain goes first. Also, I was reminded that we should be doing visual descriptions for blind and visually impaired people tuning in. So I'm just gonna pop that in really quick, and then someone else can add thoughts. But I am a white, queer, kind of genderless, navigating the space between masculine and feminine in various ways person. I wear an oxygen cannula, and I have facial tattoo and many other tattoos. I'm currently wearing a yellow crocheted toque over my blonde hair, and I'm wearing kind of a grandpa sweater and fishing vest. And I'm sitting in my bed.
Thanks, Q. I can, I'll just give a description too, just for so moving forward, because I forgot to do it when I spoke before. I was speaking on behalf of Gabrielle, but as speaking for myself, I'm a white woman with short, dark hair, wearing a pink sweater, and I'm in a room with quite plain white walls and a big window to the side. So that's me. And I'm in Kelowna, which is the unceded territory of the Silks Nation. So I'm grateful to be able to join everyone today from here.
Thank you for that as well. I am on the land of the Stolo Nation myself, in so-called Chilliwack.
Would anyone like to follow up on Q's comments? I think anyone can join in at any time. I could just add or sort of follow up if that works, if nobody else has something to say quite yet. You know, I mean, I just have to, it's sort of redundant because I just agree so much with what both of you, Gabrielle and Q, have said about moving forward and next steps. I've heard also so many people just feel very just needing to know what we can do next. And so I think the actions that Gabrielle has talked about and that she's like actively working on right now are really important. I think they're really hopeful, and they sort of give, I think they give a sense of, or I hope that they will help people to have a bit of a sense of power in their situation, so that they, I mean, I would certainly be, you know, hoping to use a lot of those tools myself, just as a disabled person, if I feel like I need to make very clear my position, that I would be able to have those tools available to me. So I think those are, I mean, thank you so much, Gabrielle, for thinking of them, for one thing, and for, you know, actually going after them and making them happen. So those are things that are, that we hope that will be available like really soon. So that's amazing to me. And then just talking about how, you know, Bill C7 and how it's happened and how we feel about it. Yeah, I think I felt the same on the day that it passed in the House of Commons. Was really, really a hard thing for me. And then by the time it went through the Senate the second time and received royal assent, I was kind of, I'd already done my processing really almost. And I wouldn't say I was certainly not over it, but just sort of over that very intense grief part and thinking about how we can move on to keeping on supporting our community as much as we can and helping to build it. And as Senator McCallum said, we're not done, like regrouping and taking the opportunity that we have in front of us to really try to keep the movement going. There's one thing that I've been thinking a lot about, and it's sort of, we listened to so much discussion about Bill C-7 from all of these people, non-disabled people talking about Bill C-7 and giving their opinions on it. And just one of the things that's just really been in my chest, I guess, is that I really don't, I'm sort of over listening to non-disabled people talk about what they think about Bill C-7, because it's not about, it's about us. It's directed at us as disabled people specifically. So I don't know. That's just something that I've been sort of carrying around with me and think I don't know what to do with it. But it's just been very frustrating to see some of the comments and some of the writing and the media that is interviewing and giving sort of the equal space and weight to people's voices who are not directly impacted by this legislation. So yeah, that's just my thoughts.
I relate to that quite a bit. All of their responses are to an imagined reality, their imagination of what disability is, of what living in poverty is. For all of the white men speaking on it, it's an imagination of what living as an Indigenous person or a Black person or a person of color, it's their idea of what that lived reality would be like. And I've got to say, their imaginations are not accurate. They talk about suffering as if interdependence and community and needing somebody is a bad thing. And I relate to being so tired of that. And also the more generous part of me feels like oddly sorry for them, in that they think that interdependence relegates them to being less than human, when it's like the most human part of all of us is meeting other people. That's one of the defining characteristics of humanity, is that we are such a social species. And yeah, their imaginations are just severely lacking in that realm.
Well, look at the movies they watch, and look at the books they read. They're immersed in a culture that has found it, for whatever reason, artistically convenient to let us be the avatars for human suffering. I mean, I think the filibuster really was an attempt to shake that up, right? To portray, very. I mean, I think we offered some rather intimate looks into our private conversations that were full of joy and humor and really spot on critique and the mechanisms of our lives and the way that we live them were part of the backdrop, but they were also part of the story, because of the ways in which we made our access dynamics very visible. And as you know, we often said amongst ourselves, the back end of the production was apparent for all to witness. And you know, I think we demonstrated how we make it work. Someone who I forgot to get her permission, but if she's watching, she'll appreciate that. She said to me that she thought that the disability filibuster, to paraphrase, was that the footage that we recorded was kind of the rough cut of the Canadian Crip Camp. It really, you know, I think it is a moment. And as the senator said, it is a pivotal moment of history. For disability consciousness, disability pride, and disability culture. And we have captured some of that in a sort of an unconscious and performative way, or an unscripted performative way. It will take some time, perhaps, to persuade non-disabled audiences to have a peek. But there's a heck of a lot to be learned, and I think we can all feel pretty proud of what we offered. I forgot visual description. I'm a I'm an older white woman, and you can't see a lot of me actually in the frame. I'm wearing a turtleneck sweater, and I'm sort of in the mid range of the frame because in the foreground you have all of my technology, all of those terrifying things that non-disabled people squirm about. But really, I think of it as my cockpit. I've got my wheelchair control items, and I've got suction hoses and microphones and breathing apparatus, and you name it, it's all here within reach of my mouth. And in the background, it occurred to me it's a green screen, but not like the word usually means. It's not like the high tech. It's a real old-fashioned pine 3-panel screen with a bit of green fabric strung from end to end. So that's my version, the old lady version of the green screen background. There, I've totally distracted myself and disrupted the conversation, but there you go. Those are my thoughts in response to cues.
Thank you, Catherine. That was great.
I could go next if.
Please.
Hi everyone, I'm Ameil Joseph. I'm a faculty member in the School of Social Work at McMaster. My pronouns are he, him. I'm speaking to you from my basement. I'm Canadian-born Guyanese of South Asian descent, descendant of indentured laborers brought from India to work in sugar plantations in Guyana. I'm on the traditional territories of the Mississauga and Haudenosaunee nations, the lands protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. I wear glasses. I'm wearing a visually annoying plaid shirt, I think, and a white background. I have a short beard. I've been thinking a lot about what has been said here, and I think the word imagining is so accurate. The things that I struggle with, that I continue to be frustrated with, are how could this have happened this way? What happened here when we have this situation where we're told that people were consulted, a word that should never be used again, when it's been so vividly violated. And you have over 130 disability organizations put in writing that they're not in support of this. You have reps from the UN doing the same, academics, people with lived experience, all telling you what's wrong with this, and no level of analysis or complexity of analysis turn into an outcome that was reasonable, one that was taking the simple point that one could recognize that there's a problem with the current legislation, maybe that it doesn't allow for something, and the way to investigate that would be to reach out to communities, to ask people. But to say you did and then do what you're originally intending to anyways, and ignoring those people, is the thing that I still struggle with. And that, the word imagining for me helps me understand that better. You know, this idea of a imagined community, an imagined community that they are saving, an imagined community that they're targeting, and that, you know, an imagination of the self as the object of consideration in this bill. I found a lot of people approaching conversations about it, about C7, with, well, if that were me, I would, when it had nothing to do with them. They had no analysis that was informed, that helped them to appreciate that MAID already existed, that advanced directives already exist, that palliative care has existed, that people have all kinds of ways to alleviate suffering at end of life. You know, people weren't aware because they weren't in those positions, and they weren't educated on matters, but they were following the example that was being presented to them publicly by you know, elected leaders and elected officials that were doing the same thing, coming out of nowhere and taking positions that were based on an imagination, a contrived imagination, a simulation of who is the target, who is the beneficiary of such a piece of legislation. It was, I'm still baffled, you know, as Gabrielle's words illuminated the kind of bereft analysis that didn't intend a class, that didn't intend a disability or race or indigeneity or colonialism. How that made its way forward, to me, doesn't signal to me a failure in people's you know, advocacy work to and organizing to bring forward an analysis that made sense. Instead, it reveals the kinds of ways this kind of perfect storm of ignorance collided in this, for this bill. Ways that people could say they did things that they didn't, which is the consultation and reviewing and listening, the kinds of things that aren't true when you say you do those things and you don't listen to what's being said to you. And then you end up in a situation where we know for a fact that harm's going to be done, and people's lives are what's at stake. And you know, as Gabrielle's words conveyed as well, you know, what do we do now? Well, in this moment, when you know the truth, when you know that there's harm done, and you know there's going to be a limitless number of challenges to this piece of legislation because it doesn't make sense. What do we do in the interim? Well, I think, you know, the ways we think about understanding what's happening, what people are going through as they kind of try to reconcile or build a kind of collective critical consciousness about what happened. That word imagine just did that for me through Q's analysis. You know, how we do that kind of thing to help understand what did happen and then move forward to what's needed now. And the kinds of initiatives that Gabrielle was referring to around, you know, taking action to resource people with tools that can protect people in this period of unknown violence. Maybe that's the way, one of the other ways, you know, beyond the kind of grappling with the confusion of this, that we organize and commit to the next step.
Thanks, Ameil. Yeah.
Yeah, I could just comment. Gabrielle and I met with quite a few senators and MPs over the last few months. And without fail, I believe every single one that after we met with them, when we spoke with them, and you know what a communicator Gabrielle is, and almost, or maybe completely, without every single one of them, after we spoke to them, sat back and said, I never thought about it like that before. But that's okay if it's a person walking down the street and you don't expect them to have given, a great deal of thought to this issue. But these people are making the laws, and they have a responsibility to be educated and informed, and as you say, to do consultation and it was just as shocking to me as it was to you. I guess to me, it just speaks to the deeply, deeply held convictions. And how do we unseat, I don't know how we go about unseating them, but I think that's part of our next work, is shaking those belief systems somehow. I think it has to be, because I don't think we've, I think it's still there. It's very strongly still there. So, whatever it is that are the next steps that we do, I believe that part of it will have to be trying to shake those concepts of disability.
I'm conscious of time. We do have, just saying to Fenrir, time really flies when you're having engaging conversation there. I want to very briefly speak to what you just raised there, Spring, about how whatever we do next will have to involve, kind of tackling those ableist notions and imaginations and concepts. I know a lot of folks are really wondering about what exactly we are still doing now that the bill has passed. And just to briefly take some folks through kind of what we talked about as a group. One of our biggest things has been education. And I think that has to be an element in that moving forward, is whatever education we're doing, as much as we want to center disabled people and CRIPs and our community in this, part of it will have to be directed outward to some extent, I think, if we want to make strides in moving forward and tackling these assumptions and whatnot. Want to make sure Garth want to say anything further before we do some kind of wrap up?
No, thanks for the conversation. I feel better than I did this morning.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a huge impact of the filibuster, as so many people have said that it's just felt good to have a space to air these thoughts and plan and get involved and learn more for a lot of folks.
I've been at the start of a bunch of mobilizations of social movements, and this is what it feels like. I've been here before for other movements, and it always is like a bolt of electricity. It's always really good, and it's just like this is the beginning of something, not the end of something.
Yeah.
And I'm so honored that I was invited to come to the table and get to witness that. So thanks. Oh yeah, I'm also black t-shirt, dark room, really pale white dude because of albinism, and squinty because of being blind. So there's your visual description. Tattoos, but you can't see them. Piercings too.
Also, I did want to note what G said in the chat was education, yes, but not awareness. I think a lot of disabled people will echo that thought. We have had plenty of awareness We do
Yeah.
not need more awareness. We need actual education.
We're aware.
Yeah. We're aware, they're aware, everyone's aware that we exist. The problem is that that's not always not always the most welcome thing in society. And like, how do we move from there?
Yeah, and when politicians say, "Oh, we have to have brave conversations about this," I always think having a conversation has got to be the smallest unit of social change that it's possible to determine. I mean, not a conversation among us. We're organizing. That's different. But when someone's like in charge and has power and says, "What I'm going to do with all of this power, including the power to make laws, is have a fucking conversation." Are you kidding me? And so,
Yes.
yeah, like you hear that, and that's just like, oh, you don't get it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Catherine, that does take us to the end of our first hour that we allotted for this roundtable.
Yeah.
Senator
Could I just say
McCallum.
something?
Yes.
Oh,
please.
yes.
Okay. I wanted to describe where I am. I didn't do that. I'm an older Indigenous woman, and I have long dangling earrings. I have my gray hair, which I thought I used to dye it, and I thought, no, I need to respect my gray hair. I have in the background, I have beadwork, mucklucks, mitts that were done. I have a painting of the creation story. And on this side, I have my ancestors. It's my grandmother's, my brother, and it's pictures from the 1940s. So I keep them there to keep me centered and grounded of where I am, where I came from, and what I stand for. I think that is it. I have a gray leather jacket. Most of my clothes come from secondhand stores, I love secondhand stores. And I think that's it. But I wanted to offer that in Senate in the next, I did a motion to look at the institutional racism and white privilege that exists in Senate, and it's buried under the order paper right now, but we should be coming to it. And it's the racism within Senate and how we conduct ourselves as parliamentarians who make laws for people. And I said that in my, I don't know if you stayed for the rest of the speeches for the Mi'kmaq fisheries and how this system doesn't work for Indigenous people, for a lot of people. So with the education part where you said, how do we find solutions together? We can offer to bring people to come and speak to senators. We can do it through Zoom. We can ask that they be part of this because they enacted this law. And now how do we find a solution together on what is happening with the disability community? And we can do that. You can fashion it however you want. And, so you could shake some of those belief systems. This is where you left us at, and exactly what you said today, like people need to hear that language. So if we can help you in any way, you can let us know, okay?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mm.